Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Ferreira. You're watching the Cloud Therapist channel.
Hello and welcome to the Cloud Therapist Shorts. I'm Richard Simon. This video is the second in a three-part series of short talks that we'll be doing on value stream management. Do check out the other parts if you get the chance, and if you haven't already, that's also on the Cloud Therapist channel. My guest again is Steve Pereira. Steve is also known as the Value Stream Guy. Steve is a board advisor of the Value Stream Management Consortium, founder of Visible Value Stream Consulting, and he's also running the Toronto's DevOps community since 2011. And he's been in tech for quite a long time, about 20 years or so. So welcome back, Steve.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Excellent. Steve, so we kind of, in part one, we covered sort of an intro, a very quick intro to value stream management, and we kind of talked about sort of the shift from sort of current state to future state a little bit, which is again all kind of part of that sort of discussion, also flows and things like that. In this one, I'd like to kind of for us to focus a little bit more about VSM in action and kind of real life scenario. So talk to us a little bit about that, please.
Sure. So the focus of value stream management is really around addressing constraints in workflow. So trying to understand where will a targeted improvement effort actually impact our ability to deliver value to customers.
Right.
And that can manifest itself in many different ways. It typically manifests itself as waste in the process, right? And waste can be any number of things. There's an acronym called downtime, which breaks down multiple different types of waste that you could find in a value stream. Folks can go look that up. I would also suggest that folks look up the theory of constraints, because it kind of underpins a lot of the theory behind value stream management. And it's essentially this idea that there's always a constraint in the flow. And if you actually try to improve anything other than the constraint, you're not necessarily going to see any effect from that effort, because everything is sort of bottlenecked by this constraint. And only by targeting your efforts at the constraint are you going to see the most return on investment. Like your efforts are going to pay off if you find the constraint and you actually tackle it specifically. So value stream management really gives you a framework for finding that constraint by measuring the flow. And you measure a couple of things. You'll measure lead time, most importantly. The first thing to measure is kind of how long does it take to go from start to finish with this process? And then you break that up into how long does it take to do each of these activities, each individual activity in the process, and how long are we waiting between each activity? And that's kind of the core of value stream management. But then to really talk about value, what we also look at is how much of the work is up to our specifications. So as it progresses through the flow, is it meeting our targets of quality or not?
Right. And
we can also look at another dimension. We can look at multiple dimensions, but the most core essential dimensions are this timing aspect, quality, but also what we like to look at is value added time. So how much of the time that we spend doing all this stuff are we actually doing work that we think is valuable? So an example of that is sort of like if I'm tasked with migrating an application, and maybe I'm refactoring it, maybe I'm pulling it out of a monolith, changing it to a 12-factor app, and then pushing it out to the cloud as a cloud native application. And let's say it takes me 8 days to get a testing environment stood up, and that's with the data that I need, all the environmental configuration properly set up. And really the value added time there is the time that it takes me to kind of like request that to happen. Everything else, I'm just waiting for it to happen. mean, it could be that I have to send it off to another department, or it could be just that I have to wait for automated provisioning to complete, and it takes forever because we're using a very inefficient process. Or maybe it doesn't take that long to spin it up, but it takes me a long time to validate that it's actually correctly set up. There's very little value added time in that scope. And an easy way to test this, and it's not perfect, but it's important to kind of ask ourselves, like, would my customer be happy to pay for what I'm doing right now, right? Would they consider this to be valuable?
Yeah.
Would they be happy that I'm spending my time doing this? Or, would they be happy with the amount of time that I'm sitting around waiting for this to happen? And most of the time the answer is no. They don't want to pay for you to wait around. They don't want to pay for you to configure something they don't even care about. And of course, we can't get rid of all of those things, but we do have to make sure that we manage those things, that we minimize and mitigate the effects of the delays, the friction, the pieces that are unnecessarily complicated, so that we can maximize that value added time, the time that our customers are happy to pay for.
Sure. So it's kind of one of the sort of discussions we had a while back was kind of around tying the efforts to the outcomes. I think was one of the things that you mentioned, which I thought was actually really good. I thought that was kind of really, putting it into perspective. So in terms of kind of a CTO or a CIO, what's part of their sort of OKRs is a lot of sort of improvement. I'm actually having to do that in my current role as well. But what's kind of, how can they put it into action? What's the kind of things they can immediately kind of get some success on?
Yeah, well, if I'm let's say I'm a CTO and one of my OKRs is a major migration or a major re-engineering effort, then whatever my target is can be framed in the context of the value stream by considering it the mechanism that is going to deliver my target outcome, right? My objective. So let's say I have to migrate an entire portfolio of apps from cloud A to cloud B, or let's say duplicate them so that I have some redundancy and maybe I have them dormant on a cloud that I'm able to spin them up for disaster recovery. But let's say the core of the effort, what's going to get me a promotion is that I move this portfolio from cloud A to cloud B. So the way that the value stream is involved in that OKR is it's the how of that, it's the how it's going to happen. And, you don't just do these things as projects anymore. It's not a one-time thing because there's always going to be another cloud. There's always going to be another migration. There's always going to be another way to structure, architect your application. You're always migrating, right? There's never been a point where migration has been done and finished. If it is, it probably means that your product's dead and you have bigger problems to worry about. But if you are succeeding over the long term, it means you're evolving all the time, which means migration and this key aspect of you accomplishing your OKR is something that you're going to have to do all the time. And so considering that work as a value stream and a flow that can be optimized is really valuable, because if, let's say you've got 300 applications or even 300 components or 300 services backing your application, you really want to make sure that every single one of those that flows through that process effectively. And that you've managed the constraints there and that you can do that at a high rate of speed, because ultimately your customers don't care where your app is hosted. They're not going to wait for it to happen. You're not getting paid extra to have it sitting in one place versus the other. So you have to make sure this is really effective. So as a CTO, you want to make sure that your value stream is flowing effectively, that you understand that process, you understand where you need to automate or improve automation or improve quality. And you also, as a CTO, I think you want to make sure that everyone on your team, everyone who is below you, or even the people who you're collaborating with as peers, understand the process, because you probably need their help. You need them to be contributing. You need them to be clear on how everything fits together. So a value stream map, and value stream management really ties all those pieces together in a way that everyone can see what's going on and where their focus will be most valuable.
Okay, cool. So just before we kind of distinguish between mapping and management, what about sort of just briefly on somebody who's maybe, let's say, a VP of engineering or something? How would they kind of be able to, sort of take advantage of VSM?
Yeah, so it's good that you mentioned the mapping part, because I think that value stream mapping is really the first step of value stream management. And what we do with value stream mapping is kind of manually illustrate the steps and the timing and all the measurement of the value stream before we stand up something automatic like a value stream management platform. So value stream management is kind of like this umbrella term that incorporates a bunch of different aspects of value streams and the managing of value streams. So one of those things is value stream mapping, which allows you to illustrate and measure the value stream by running a workshop with folks, or you could do it yourself, but you're probably going to miss a lot of information unless you do it with a number of different representatives from across the value stream. So you map it out, and I've got a bunch of resources that, of course, we can link to on what that looks like and how that's done. But that really gives you a picture of what the value stream looks like and where those constraints are.
Sure.
And then what you do with value stream management platforms and the software and the tools that are now out on the market for management is that once you've started down the road, value stream management platforms let you measure your progress. So a map just gives you a point in time snapshot, but the management platform is going to give you that continuous data on performance of the value stream so that you can understand where the constraint is, where you might be seeing issues, and allow you to kind of monitor the state of the value stream at any given point and collect that data over time, which shows you trending. It shows you, how you're improving or not over a longer term period, which I think is a really important next step beyond the initial mapping snapshot.
Sure. So yeah, so somebody's kind of in that sort of development engineering can, there are tools out there that are off-the-shelf tools that they can make use of to actually get all of this, kind of, we're not sort of expecting them to draw it on a whiteboard somewhere and keep it forever. It's just something they can, digitally use as well. And we also, I think, touched on a little bit around sort of how does it help in kind of, entering a new market or trying to kind of stay competitive, with other people who are kind of in the same field as well. I think you mentioned that in the past as those kind of, being examples of that as well. Excellent. Well, again, Steve, really appreciate your time for kind of going into a little bit more on sort of VSM in action and who can use it and kind of what does it sort of entail and some of the kind of the thinking around that. We'll cover a little bit more in the third part as well. We'll kind of go into a little bit more sort of about sort of how to successfully sort of implement it and make use of it. But yeah, so thanks again, Steve, for your time. I'll be providing a little bit more information in the description of the video. Again, details about VSM and also on kind of, getting information about Steve as well, and kind of his website and what he provides as well. But yeah, thanks very much, Steve, and we'll talk again soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks for watching this talk. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe and support the channel. See you next time.